I was gonna say the more seasoned crappers among y'all will know this. This is our interactive intro to the call. So get out either your phone or another browser tab and go to the URL at the top of the page, pollEV.com/mightyfrog247, or you can text mightyfrog247 to 22333. And the first of the two questions of the day is, what types of solid waste can you think of? This is anonymous, no wrong answers, and just interested to see what you're thinking about and what solid waste you can think of. Your answers will appear on the screen.
Yes, and as we're doing that, we're welcoming people to our meeting. And what I want to know, Yoko, is did you choose Mighty Frog 247, or did they give that to you?
I really wanted 248, but that was taken. No, this is randomly generated. I went through a list of about 50 randomly generated ones until I found one that I liked and that's easy to pronounce. And so that's what I ended up with. The paid version allows you to choose your own, but we haven't made that jump yet to the paid version of Poll Everywhere. So this is what we get.
All right.
Got some cool answers coming in. We have biomass. My neighbor's coming home playing his loud music. We got sewage, sediment, construction waste, meat, discarded eggs. We have poop, legs. I wonder what the legs part is. Sometimes it separates words into different submissions. We have metal, wood, trash, green waste, building waste, waste. It's everywhere. Very good. Agriculture. Half-eaten frog legs. I think I put it together, if that's something that somebody submitted. More answers still coming in. Thanks, everybody. Very cool.
It was half-eaten frog legs with the meat only half-eaten.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan.
Yes. We'll ask you about that later, Dan.
Sometimes you just can't get through the whole egg, you know? It's too much.
Yeah, it's too much.
And like then
French diet you're on.
We'll give 10 more seconds if somebody else wants to chime in, and then we can move to the second question. Still more answers coming in. Awesome. Invasive, yes. Bones. Sweet. Okay. Cut it off in 5, 4, broken surfboards. 3, 2, 1. Okay. And we'll go to the second question. Second and last question. What solid waste reuse or recycling mechanisms or processes can you think of? Solid waste reuse or recycling mechanisms or processes. This should be opening up on the same device tab, whatever that you did the first one, compost. And it disappeared again. Compost reappeared. There it is. Metal recycling, yes. Compost again, landfill, biochar, biofuel, plastic to textiles, sewer. Compost and biofuel being submitted a lot here. That's cool. Marine debris art. Cool. I wonder who that came from, Christina. Nice. Really good answer so far. Biochar even bigger. Maybe a harbinger of things to come. Don't know if it's pronounced harbinger or harbinger. Never heard that word actually said out loud.
Harbinger?
Harbinger.
Yeah.
All right, give it about 10 more seconds in case anybody has any ideas for solid waste reuse or recycling mechanisms, but these are already some awesome answers. All right, thank you all very much. Kick it back to Stuart and Christina.
All right, welcome and aloha, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm going to ask everybody to put in the chat. We've got your names, but just put your name and what kind of work you do or where you're working and what you're doing for Earth Week. If you're doing anything special or what you're celebrating. We are stoked to have you guys tonight. This is a super busy week for a lot of people because there's so many events. As we've all heard with Earth Day, it's extended into a week, and we're trying to extend it to a month and all a year. But for a lot of people, they just concentrated, and this is the one week we're going to get involved. But we're trying to get the message across that this is a year-round thing. And we have a great group, many regulars here, and a number of engineers, which is good, and environmentalists. So we will, as we're kind of seeing everybody putting their comments, what they're doing, also wanted to make a few announcements. And this is a time also that if you have some announcements, feel free to share. This is fairly informal. This is a happy hour, Pal Hana. So we cheers to you. If I can get that in focus to each of you. And thank you for joining us. And one of which is, I'll let Christina start. We have an exciting new announcement that just happened this week.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. So yeah, just to talk a little bit about our new collaboration, WAI's new collaboration with the Department of Aquatic Resources 30 by 30 initiative. So we've just recently set up an MOU or Memorandum of Understanding with them to work on land-based sources of pollution and how to kind of centralize data and methodology and create a monitoring protocol that the guys at 30 by 30 will be able to use statewide to monitor land-based sources of pollution into their marine managed areas as they begin to designate them. So that's really exciting. And we also have the opportunity to focus specifically on some areas where cesspools are causing a pollution problem.
All right, thank you. So that's on the kind of state level, and then nationally, we had our first meetings. We're part of a national cohort called Decentralized Wastewater Innovation Cohort, and we're partnering with 4 other groups across the country and trying to bring national attention to the fact that 1 out of 5 systems across the country, or 1 out of 5 homes, is on a decentralized wastewater treatment system. And on an individual wastewater treatment system, which is pretty amazing that it's that high. I think people tend to think everyone's on sewers except, a number of people in the country, in the really rural areas. But it's actually 21% according to the EPA. So that's exciting that we're working on some national things, and then we've also have some international kind of organization that we're partnering with. And Christina, I'll let you kind of talk about that.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. So the Nature Conservancy is bringing together a new organization called the Ocean Sewage Alliance, and WAI has been invited to be one of the founding partners in this international alliance. This is really exciting. They are bringing together groups from all over the world, looking at ocean sewage problems and trying to bring together experts to come up with funding and solutions, and again, kind of centralize knowledge and work together to solve these problems on a global scale.
Yeah, and that's kind of headed up by the Nature Conservancy, and so we're glad to have Rebecca back on the call, whom Yoko and I got to see on the Big Island, and not last weekend, but the weekend before. Becca, do you want to tell them kind of what we're working on?
Sure. Yeah, it was really great to meet you guys in person. We were invited down by the Kealakekua community to visit Ka'aweloa, which is, many people know that as the Captain Cook Monument on the north side of Kealakekua Bay, which gets a lot of visitors with no bathrooms at all. And they've had a lot of issues with people using the archaeological sites and really important cultural sites as going to the bathroom there. And so the community and state parks have been working together. They did an EIS to try to put in some type of treatment. They originally were planning like a helicopter pad and some composting luas. The helicopter pad wasn't really in line with the cultural sensitivities of the place. And so we had a site visit with BI, and it was really productive. And we talked about the placement of the incinerator toilets and what could work. And state park seems really open to that alternative plan. So I'm excited to see where it can go. And it was really fun to kayak across the bay and spend the day with you guys out there.
Yeah, likewise. And thanks for inviting us over there. Kealakekua Bay is one of my favorite places, not only in Hawaii, but on the planet. So beautiful. And then any other announcements? This is a pretty high level group. And so you're all working on very interesting and challenging projects and doing cool research. I will point out just someone who's new to our group. We've been working with Mike Annett. So Mike, if you want to just say a few words about who you are, because I think most of the people know each other. You're on mute.
You mute it right now, Mike.
Still muted. It's funny, we never get over it. No matter how many times we do it, we're still.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, I've been involved with water and wastewater systems for about 40 years now. And currently I'm specializing in water treatment associated with aquaculture and aquaponics. And I'm working on several land-based seaweed production facilities, as well as different types of aquaponics kind of solutions. So, but I've been involved with water and waste for many, many years.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, Mike, from San Francisco.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Before we jump into our presentation, any other announcements? Matt announced that he was going to be having a baby, so that pretty much trumps all of our other announcements and developments. Cool. Well, thank you for joining us. It's my pleasure to introduce Jeff Hallowell, who I met in Beijing, of all places, 2 years ago at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Expo, when Chris Lee and I went over there from Hawaii to talk about Hawaii's situation. And the head of the wastewater treatment kind of division, the WASH program at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, immediately, I want you to meet Jeff Hallowell. I think you guys are going to have a connection. And we not only made that connection about, you know, what we're working on and similar issues in Hawaii, but stayed up till 3 a.m. drinking and talking about, you know, plans, and we've stayed in touch ever since and had numerous meetings. And I'm just a huge fan, not only him personally, but his technology. I think is one of the game-changing technologies that could be really take off in Hawaii, but also across the Pacific, across the continent, across the globe, because it's so elegant in some ways and unique, but it's also just very universal and kind of has many different applications. And just a little background, you know, Jeff worked with Oracle and then worked with Netscape and was head of the Northeast Division, did healthcare. He's kind of a Renaissance man, and then formed Biomass and started working with the Gates Foundation starting in 2013, and now has facilities that they have working on around the world. So Jeff, it's great to have you here again, and we appreciate you taking the time, especially because it's late on the East Coast. So we appreciate you taking the time to share your insights with us.
Thank you, Stuart, and appreciate it. It's not really that late because all this week I've been participating in an event in the Philippines, and so I've been getting up at 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. So one of the benefits of traveling is you're in the right time zone, but not traveling and still participating. Zoom world around the world is a little bit different. But anyways, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the group. I've got a few slides I can share and go over today, and I'm going to share my screen right now. So the rule is please interrupt if you have any questions. So thanks again for being invited to the CRAP group. And so the title, they asked me to pick an interesting title. So I did 3 ways your CRAP could save the planet. And so first of all, I looked into figuring out what is the definition of CRAP. And a lot of people think CRAP was named after Thomas Crapper, who invented early technology in toilets. And people used to say, I'm going to the crapper. Maybe people do now as well. But in fact, he has really nothing to do with it. It actually comes from the Dutch. And the verb is to defecate. And the noun is for excreta, or to have excrement. And so what is excreta? It's defined as ISO as a waste product of a solid or liquid, generally urine or feces, but generally excreta also covers any fluid that comes out of a person. And so, but for the purposes of today, we're going to be talking about urine and feces. About 2/3 of the world doesn't have access to safe sanitation. For example, in India, where we work, about 700 million people don't have a toilet. And one of the interesting things is that in a lot of countries, it is used for agriculture because it does have a lot of benefit. It has nitrogen, has phosphorus, potassium, but it also has a lot of carbon in it as well. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So just a quick preview of what we're going to be talking about is the 3 ways your CRAP could save the planet. Is number 1 is to improve soil health. Number 2 is a durable form of carbon removal. And the last is clean water. And this is just an example of a fish pond and how the Hawaiians used to use these to recycle nutrients and to keep fish in there. And they would grow them and harvest them as they got too big and they couldn't get out of the weir there. So just kind of a little bit of ingenuity there. The way we do it is we look for renewable resources like human waste and food waste and others, and we capture those nutrients in the form of a carbon-based product. It's been used for thousands of years. We didn't invent it. One of the famous places is in the Amazon. It's called Terra Preta, which means black earth or dark earth. And they used to use that to be able to feed a lot of people and make the land very productive. Most soils around the world are not very productive and they need to be built up. So they would use charcoal, they would mix it with animal waste, human waste, food waste, and they would put it all together and use it in the soil. And you can see the richness there and the organic content, which then holds moisture and nutrients ready for the plants. And it's still there very deep in many places in the Amazon still. So this is just a quick look at Hawaii and the island of Maui. And you can see that there are generally in the world, there's 12 different soil types. There's actually 190 different soil categories in Hawaii. There's about 10 that are present and only 2 of them really have organic carbon. So on that map, it's the green, it's the more like the Kelly green color, and it's the purple that are high. Some of them are just high in carbon. And then some of them are also high in organic matter, which there's other materials there as well. But you can see that there is a need for organic material, or soil organic matters, SOM as they often call it, in the soil. And one of the reasons we're talking about biochar is also that it is an approach to remove carbon. So photosynthesis is probably the most well-known process to remove carbon from the atmosphere. But the problem is that once the tree dies, it goes back into the atmosphere again. But if you make biochar, you can actually bring it back to the soil, and you can actually create a negative emissions there as well. And this is from a well-known group called World Resources Institute. It's used by a lot of corporations as they're trying to target and manage how they're going to mitigate carbon and remove it as well. And the key thing here is that without a negative emission strategy, you can never get to net zero. There's basically 5 pillars of carbon removal. The first one we're probably familiar with is trees, and that lasts the life of the tree. Soil is another way that you can hold carbon, and especially if there's plants and grasses and things in there as well. The next one is bioenergy, carbon capture and storage, which sometimes is referred to as BECCS. There's actually a company in Hawaii, it's called Carbon Cure, and they actually pump CO2 into cement and call it green cement, which is a form of BECCS. And then the fourth one is biochar, and this is all gigatons. So the market there for biochar is about 5 gigatons per year by 2050. And then enhanced weathering is a very strange one. It's about taking materials and putting them in the ground that can hold carbon as well, which is also very expensive. So the other thing we're talking about is durability. So some of these, like trees, they don't really last, thousands of years. They usually last less than 100. Soil carbon is sometimes less than 50 years. BECCS can be a very long time. It could be as long as the cement, for example, is there, or as long as the building's there. Biochar also can last hundreds, even 1,000 years. And I'm not really sure of the life of enhanced weathering. I'm not familiar with that as much. But anyways, durability is an important thing when looking at a carbon removal strategy. Getting back to the clean water, about 80% of our wastewater, even though there are sewers, I think Stuart mentioned 21% in the United States, it's really only about 5% of the sewers in the world are actually treated. If you can remember back to the Brazil Olympics, there people were getting sick swimming in the river because while they have sewers, they empty out into the rivers. They don't go through any kind of treatment facility as well. So our mission is basically to look for innovations in technology that we can take these outputs, these outputs, to some of them that were in the poll that Yoko had earlier, and how can we do this in a decentralized way? Because for a lot of places, centralized doesn't work. It's very expensive to bring the material there, and in some places it's not viable. So our vision is basically looking at this decentralized system, which kind of reminds me of the computer industry, how when I first started into it, everything was mainframe based, and now everybody holds a computer in their hands. So it's become very decentralized. A quick thing of what we're doing here is that we're actually looking to do a project in Hawaii. It's going to be a transportable, decentralized system to use the energy from the system to actually dry the material that's coming in. Waste streams that are difficult are waste streams that have high moisture, and doing volume reduction is also a big benefit there as well. One key thing is that as we're taking nutrients out of the soil, especially growing food, you need to be able to get them back in there. And so biochar also preserves those nutrients that I showed in the earlier slides, especially like potassium, and phosphorus, which are finite, and they are going to be running out, some of them as early as 2030. We process digested sludge. It's very renewable. There's going to be 10 billion people by 2030, and it's gigatons of carbon that can be reduced and put back into the soil, which are now typically going into the landfill in the States, but in most other countries it gets dumped. It ends up into the ocean as well. So there's 3 kind of horizontal markets that we're in. Toilet is one of them, but we actually started using livestock resources. So we don't call it waste because it's not a waste product, it's being used again. And those all have nutrients that need to go back into the soil. So food resources is the last one. Food waste accounts for a lot, and we want to make sure, again, those nutrients get back into the soil and are preserved. And these are some of the folks that we've worked with on that. Here's just 3 examples of our systems. The first one is in Alaska, where even having a sewer or a septic tank is prohibited because it would freeze, especially in the winter. So they use urine diverted dry toilets and use the waste, and goes into a bag, and then we process it. That has a grinder for pre-processing. The middle picture in Woodstock, Connecticut is actually at a dairy farm, so that we're taking separated manure, and we are also taking that at 65% moisture and reducing that and saving that into biochar, which goes back onto the soil as well. And then the last one is in one of our sites in India, where that one is actually near a cotton field. And so that those nutrients are being recycled and going back into a cotton field. So that is actually human waste, and that site handles about 20,000 people per day. This is just a look at our team. We have a pretty good group of folks here, a lot of experience, folks from all around, and you can see there. So we definitely have been doing a lot of startups and working in a lot of high-tech areas as well. As Stuart mentioned, we really started working with the Gates Foundation in 2013. We actually started pursuing Hawaii in 2015 because there was several articles about the cesspools, and we knew it was going to be a problem. But I don't believe it was until Chris Lee had that law that was passed or something that was stopping the cesspools by 2030, I believe. So the clock's ticking on 30-year mortgages, which puts a little bit of incentive for folks to do that. But here's some other things that we've done. Worked with space agencies. We've worked in the different ag industries as well. And we're also working in Alaska as well, because cold climate desperately needs systems, and centralized doesn't work there as well. Here's just a picture of our system. It basically has 3 components. The base system is where we make the biochar. That pyrolysis pot, you can think of kind of like a carburetor where we mix the air and the fuel. It's a very low mixture. And because of that, and because the material is wet, it causes smoke. And so therefore we handle that in the middle version, which is the catalytic converter, where we basically take that smoke and we turn it into energy, which then we transfer into the heat exchanger. We have several different kinds that we use. In Alaska, we use hot air. In India, we use hot water. And in some, we actually use vegetable oil, and because we can use it for generating power as well. It's a fairly large market opportunity. Some of the uses of the system is also, as landfills are closing, a way to divert waste, odor control, pathogens, nutrient leaching is becoming a bigger problem. We're doing a project up in Vermont where they have problems where phosphorus is going into Lake Champlain and causing algae blooms. On the economic savings, a lot of it is just about, keeping the material where it goes, or reducing volume so that you can put it back into the ground. A lot of folks now are storing a lot of that material science for long periods of time, and the investment in storage in land or in tanks is also very expensive as well. The potential market for is about a million units. So our goal is to get about 1% of that market, which is about 10,000 units. Most of the waste that we process, there's tipping fees that are paid to do that. And there's also a savings in the cost of hauling. This next section really deals with the United Nations Strategic Development Goals. There's 17 goals. Actually, 14 of them relate to sanitation and human waste. And I have more information on that later if anyone would like to, but number 6 is a big challenge. They say for every dollar you invest in sanitation, you get $5 back, because a lot of it does lead to sickness, and about 2,000 children die every day from sanitation related diseases. As far as municipal organic waste, in a lot of states, like 5 already, which I'll talk about later, they've already banned bringing food waste to the landfills. They still allow it in Hawaii, as far as I know. But a lot of folks are going with the goal of zero waste, which they've already achieved in several places in Europe especially. The market, they believe that by 2030, when we have 10 billion people, the average person will spend about $100 on water and sanitation services a year, which comes out to about a $1 trillion market. And again, that's only the sanitation. So there's other waste streams in there as well. So it's a fairly large market. And a lot of folks are committed to meeting that by 2030. The real principle behind all of this is sustainability. It is about the circular economy. It is about taking the nutrients that we get from our food and from animals and other things and putting them back where they were, because they are finite. In the meantime, we can mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, which build up from the landfills and also emit from the systems as well. We can separate and use water again. So sometimes, in the sanitation, they look for low flush toilets, but if you're recycling that water over and over again, it really doesn't matter how many liters that you need to get the job done. There's also in the future, there will be standalone systems that will generate electrical power. We've done it with 3 different technologies, and we probably will be having that out in the next 3 years, and that will probably be based on organic Rankine cycle. Environmental impacts are also very important. So reduction of solids. Imagine if all the landfills could be reduced by 95%. When those things are in there rotting, the organic waste, it causes methane and greenhouse gas emissions, which is about 20 times worse than CO2. Also, when you hold nutrients in biochar, it's not bioavailable. It waits there until the plants need it, so it's not released into the water and causing algae blooms and other things as well. And also, one of the big issues that's coming up is persistent chemicals and pathogens. So I'll add that on to things like pharmaceuticals, which are now showing up in water supply. So once you use heat to get rid of it, then it doesn't become a problem. Persistent chemicals would be things like PFAS and PFOS. The partnership that we're working on with WAI in Hawaii is with Elemental Accelerator. We've applied to their program. Water Tectonics is our sponsor. They're setting up a facility in Maui. And they basically have this model of the local community partners, and WAI is our partner for that, coordinating that as well. So WAI is really, as you know, has been an advocate for us and for Hawaii, trying to make sure that the sewage doesn't go into the ocean and into the drinking water as well, and also looking for how to handle it in an affordable way as well. Water Tectonics, what they'd like to do is set up an innovation center in Maui to show some of these technologies and how it could be treated as well. This kind of is a very kind of blown out summary of all the different things that you can do with it, but there's 3 components in the middle. One is the water, second is the solids, and then the power. And from that, you can get a lot of information. As you may have seen, like for health data, people are using human waste to detect things like COVID in the population. And there's a lot of other things you can do there for health. So these are all the things, how it relates to it. What we'll be focusing on most is the bottom left corner, which is biochar, which is a carbon-based product. One of the key things everywhere we go is that technology is adaptable. So in India and Alaska, we modify our systems to do that. And we would look forward to doing that in Hawaii as well, because there's different feedstocks that you have, different moisture levels and things, and we would want to adapt for that as well. And so again, our partners here, there's some examples of them, but our goal is to really do technology transfer and take this technology and move it out to the population, which we've already done in South Africa and India, as we've licensed 2 manufacturers there as well already. So 3 ways that your crop could save the planet. The first one is improve soil health, as I mentioned, but make sure it's a safe soil amendment. We don't want to put something in there that has plastics or pharmaceuticals or pesticides, other things, to make sure that it is good for the soil. The benefit is it stops erosion and it increases productivity of the land so that you can feed more people, which is really important, as in the future, our land must be more productive or we won't be able to feed everyone. The next one is durable carbon. Look for strategies that last more than 500 years. We can't meet the commitment, and I know Hawaii has a strong commitment of carbon neutral, but I don't think you're going to make it without any carbon negative as well. And the last one is clean water, managing the nutrients. If you don't keep those nutrients from going into the water and treating those pathogens, also that's going to be bad for the ocean, for the coral, and for drinking water as well. So just 3 things I summarized that you could do is, number 1, you could make a resolution or law to ban organic waste from the landfill. 5 states have already done that, listed here. The second is you could create an organic waste hierarchy for Hawaii. So as part of your circular economy plan, you could look at what you could do with each waste stream and where it would be appropriate for it to go. And then the last one is, out of those 5 pillars of durable carbon removal, what's your strategy and how will you do that? So, and how will we do that? So you have carbon cure right now, but what other technologies will you need in Hawaii to meet that goal? Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Jeff. I've gone over this many times, but each time I still get like new ideas and excited about it. Let's open it up for questions or comments.
I'll start if you don't mind. So one question that wasn't entirely clear was, what's the major energy source for the device? You mentioned that you may be able to produce energy as a byproduct, but what right now is the energy source, and how is the device powered essentially?
Yeah, so right now it is electrically powered. It uses about 600 watts, which is 6 light bulbs. But we have demonstrated a generation of 3 kW with organic Rankine cycle. That technology is really being driven by the automotive industry. Our partner is Fiat for that. In 2030, there will be organic Rankine cycles in almost any vehicle that currently has a radiator. So electric cars, regular cars, and trucks. And so cars will have a small power, probably about 300 watt system, but the trucks will be in the 4 to 6 kW range. And so they'll be recycling the heat. And so that'll really be a standard product at that time. So we've been working on it for about 3 years, but we believe it'll be a little bit more mature and lower cost in the next few years. And our goal is to have a battery inside the system, which right now we're using a saltwater battery, and then it starts up the system, and then it runs and it charges the battery back again. And so it'll be completely off grid. So our goal is not to use any power. We do have one site in India where they actually just announced today that they hooked up solar power to run it. So that's completely off the grid as well. But our goal is not to use any fossil fuels to run it at all. Good question.
Hey, Jeff, I got another question. First of all, thank you. That was very interesting. I have a question about startup, and I guess, do you need constant input, or what happens if there's a lapse in input?
Well, I mean, it runs better if it runs continuously, but in India, for example, they start and stop it every day, 6 days a week, because they're afraid of the dark in a lot of those areas. So in Alaska, they're not afraid of the dark because it's dark a lot, so they run it more. So with each culture, it's going to be different. But we do have an idle mode where it can just take a little bit of material and stay idle and stay warm, so that the next time you put it in, it's not a cold start. So we can do cold start, we can do warm start. But during startup, we use a catalyst technology. So catalyst is similar to technology that's in cars, even in hybrid cars, but it's designed for organic material, not fossil fuels. And so we have pollution control. A lot of our patents that was on that are really around the air emissions. So our goal is to have it clean and run clean, but in Alaska, sometimes they only run it 1 or 2 days a week, but we have had times, even in India, where they have run it, where they've gotten behind and they've run it days at a time. The farm can run continuously. So it really depends on the application, but the best production is going to be steady use. So we're flexible.
So on that, just thinking, adding on to Matt's question, that if you had like sludge from a wastewater treatment plant, you would mix it, I think. So there's a ratio of like that and green waste that's going to burn easily. And so it's all about the combinations that you put in, you know, because one might have a high moisture content or such.
Correct. So for startup, we use dry biomass. So the first time we start it up, we usually use like wood pellets, wood chips to start it up because it's clean. It starts up. You can even use charcoal or biochar from the day before. But after it runs about an hour, it heats up the heat exchanger and then it dries the human waste coming in, because most human waste, when it goes through a separator, is still about 75 to 85% moisture. So human waste has as much energy as wood. But you just have to dry it. And drying can be very expensive, but if you use the energy from the material, there's enough to dry it coming in. So we use a belt dryer that's perforated and it pulls the air down through it. And you can use air in the 130 to 150 degree Fahrenheit range, and it will dry it over an hour as it's coming into the system. The mixture is really part of the ISO standard. So ISO allows us to use up to 49% other. And so in a lot of communities, they do throw other things into with the human waste. They might put animal waste in there. There might be toilet paper. There might be feminine products in there. There might be ag waste or farm residue. So it allows us to do that because we know that in each community, there's going to be a recipe that they use to get the right amount of nutrients and the right pH for the soils in their community. So it gives them some flexibility to be able to do that.
And just for reference, maybe mention what the ISO standard is, Jeff, if you could.
Yeah, so there's the ISO standard that we're trying to meet. It just came out last year, and I was actually on the committee. It's called ISO 31800, and it's downloadable at ansi.sanitation.org. And that's a legal site.
Yeah, and it's kind of parallel in many ways to the NSF, National Sanitation Foundation standards, right?
Correct, and they had two representatives that were on the committee as well. So the NSF is just primarily US, where the ISO is worldwide. So there were people on the committee from all over the world from different standards group. And if you can think of the standard, it really isn't a new standard. It's it's like an a la carte where they've selected other standards that already exist and they put them together in a standard. So it's a amalgamation of a lot of other best practices from around the world, starting with the WHO, World Health Organization standard.
Great, and other questions? I have one, maybe can you tell us like where you can see this, your technology being used, like wastewater treatment plants is definitely one, but what are some other ones? I know we talked about like composting before.
Well, in the short term, I think it'll be a mobile system that'll go around and do treatment. But I think long term, a building, like an apartment building, a dorm, institutions, they'll have their own system. They'll be doing water recycling and they'll be processing their solid waste right in the facility. There's no reason to haul that away anywhere, especially food waste and stuff. You have to really get rid of that in 24 hours. And that's really the benefit of our system, is that when the material comes in, we process it that day. And each system can handle about 2 tons of material per day. But we make smaller ones too, so you don't need to have that amount. But there is, in a lot of buildings, there is a lot. But I do know that in some places, water is getting to be very expensive. So reuse of water is happening already. I know one place I've been is Grand Canyon, where all the toilets and everything say reclaimed water on them. So they already have been doing that for quite a while because they don't have it and they have to truck it in. And it's very expensive. So they reuse it a few times and then they use it to water their plants there as well.
Thank you, Jeff. Other questions?
Yeah, I just got another question on the energy side of things. So can you go into a little more detail on how the energy is recaptured from the system? You mentioned a term that I'm, admittedly not familiar with that will be in cars and such. Can you just explain that a little deeper?
Sure. So Rankine cycle is steam. So steam engines are Rankine cycle, but organic Rankine cycle is they use a fluid, an organic fluid, and it has a very low boiling point. So they make these fluids that will boil at a very low temperature, and they'll also be low pressure. And so the benefit of organic Rankine cycle is that it's quiet, which it is. And it's basically, if you think about it, it's a compressor on a refrigerator running backwards. So the technology already exists with the screw. It's just really applying it a little bit differently. But basically, our system can heat up oil, and the oil can be heated up at a temperature like avocado oil, for example, can be heated up very high. And then you can run it through a plate exchanger, and that plate exchanger then makes steam using that organic fluid. And then that organic fluid will turn a turbine and make the power. There's a lot of different sites you can look at for organic Rankine cycle, but it's really, I think it's going to be the future in power generation, where steam engines were extremely popular in the 1800s. They kind of went away from them because they were high pressure, high temperature. But the organic ones, which a lot of fluids people know that are in refrigeration systems, have gotten a lot better, a lot more environmentally friendly. And those are going to be much more readily available and be fairly low cost. So there's a lot of companies making them. Some are making tens of thousands of them per year. A lot of it's European technology. There's a lot of Chinese technology that's coming out as well, but it uses very low energy heat. So you could even think of it as solar thermal generates enough heat that could be generating electricity as well. So for somebody off the grid using solar panels, they could also do solar thermal. They have those vacuum tubes that can get up pretty high, and you could generate electricity from that as well. So there's going to be a lot of applications, but the cool thing is you're going to be able to go down to your auto parts store to be able to get parts for it. It's already built in Can-Am, and there's a lot of different standards in the automotive industry for communication and diagnostics. And the organic Rankine cycles are already built into that with temperatures and everything. So it'll be really safe, it'll be tested, and we're not trying to prove a new technology, we're just trying to integrate it into a different use into our system. We've also used Stirling engines. Stirling engines have been around for 200 years, but they're just not as efficient, and they're large. And there's other technologies as well. We did a lot of research on all the different technologies that are available kind of in the microgrid space. And organic Rankine, we believe, and others don't, but we believe it is the best. And that's what the automotive industry is really betting the future of cars on after 2030.
On that note, so the energy gets converted into electricity at that point, and then it runs. How does that integrate into the gas engine?
Yeah, so a lot of systems, as you know, right now run AC, but a lot of the cars obviously are DC. So we're already converting over a lot of our components to be DC. And so we've got like custom made fans and everything by a German company. So we're going to be ready to go DC. So that's what we're going to do. So that technology is available. Right now we use an inverter, and I can show you pictures of the system, and some of it is on our website, but not really very clear. But we are using an inverter there. We're going to 230 right now because our systems are designed for international use. So we're not doing 120, but if we can do everything 12 volt, that'll prevent us from having to meet US, UL, and international CA and Canadian CSA. We can just meet one international standard with 12 volt and do that. So up to 60 volts, you don't even have to get certified because it's considered a low voltage system. So there's a lot of benefits for low voltage. There's a lot of benefits for low pressure, but I have a lot more information on organic Rankine cycle. I'd be happy to share it with you offline, but I think it's very interesting and exciting, and it's going to change a lot of things in the next few years.
Hey, Jeff, to bring it back to biochar, just, in Paul Hawkins' book Drawdown, he mentions biochar production as one of the top ways to help mitigate climate change and to go into that negative carbon production. It's been used, for our elemental accelerator application. We're talking about using it for water filtration for stormwater drains. Kind of interested just to hear, have any of you worked with biochar in your fields? And if so, how? Because we're thinking about this would be to be able to use this for stormwater filtration, even with around fish ponds. They're having problems with all kinds of sedimentation, erosion, and even pathogens like at Hei, a fish pond. That this is a great kind of filter, even if you just use the biochar around, people are putting it on the edge of their lawns or wherever water would pass through before it goes into the street or sidewalks. So in the last few minutes, I just kind of wanted to open it up if, that focus on biochar.
Yeah, I just made a comment. There's a guy, Kevin Flanagan. I'm not sure if you guys know him. He's more of a farmer in Waimanalo. Yeah, kind of a crazy scientist guy. So I was out there when he built a biochar machine, but it was mainly to use like albizia and other kind of wood wastes they had on the property into the biochar. But that's the only experience I've had with it. I hear a lot about it, but it seems like, it's kind of one of these mythical silver bullets that I don't really see a lot in practice. But then again, I'm not a farmer, so. But Jeff, I got a question about your main approach to market. It's kind of entertaining and depressing that you said you targeted Hawaii in 2015, I think. So, it's not exactly yesterday. What do you reckon Hawaii needs to do to get its crap together, so to speak?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think a lot of it is policy driven. The policy exists to allow people to continue to do what they're doing. I think the ban on cesspools is great, but I don't think you've really given treatment options or how you're going to improve your soil. So I think it needs to be more holistic as you look at the whole island and say, how's it affecting our soil? How's it affecting our water? If people are buying locally, which I know I've seen a lot of things where people are starting to buy more locally, especially during COVID, how are those nutrients getting back to those farms so that they can be sustainable long-term? Or are you just going to keep drying down those soils and turning them into sand like they have in other parts of the world, especially like India? I mean, they used to be very rich soils there. Now a lot of the soil is less than 1% carbon, which is definition is typically a desert. So, so I think you need to look at those things and decide how that's going to happen. Are you going to source it locally and take all your nutrients and put them in the landfill and in the water, or are you going to start having a plan to recover that food waste and put it back into that in there as well? One of the key things is EPA 503, which is against vector attraction, odor. So you got to do it in a way that doesn't provide any critters that are going to be there, rats, snakes, other things, and bears in some places where I am. But you just have to figure out a strategy to do that. And I think also as part of Hawaii's commitment to renewables, how are you going to meet all your goals? What's the strategy to do that? And I think carbon removal has to be part of that. I know they're doing that with that cement-based CO2 injection, but there's going to be a lot of other ones that need it. So why don't Hawaii be the innovator? They seem to have goals that are ahead of the rest of the nation, but I don't see the technologies being funded there that are going to drive it to make them a leader. And so I'm hopeful that they will. That's why I'm being persistent, because I think they're open-minded to do that. And if they see something, hopefully they'll adopt it. But I think policy is going to be the big driver to make this happen. That's why I had a couple of ideas in my last slide.
Yeah.
And just a quick follow-up. It sounds like to connect all those different silos, your main ideal market for everyone would be the municipal market, right? Someone that's got access to all the feedstocks and perhaps influence over the utilities to take the offset if it wants to get scaled big enough, and also the agricultural community. So you're bridging a lot of departments in a bureaucracy which traditionally don't talk to each other. That's kind of the problem with these kind of great systems, is it's connecting silos that are operating totally independently. And it takes someone as a really progressive mayor, governor, mayor, like whatever, yeah, department head, to kind of say, hey, you guys need to work together to connect these disparate dots. So is the municipal market would be your best ideal impact here in Hawaii?
I think municipal market is the best. However, it's typically successful as a PPP, public-private partnership. There has to be some private entity that's operating it and running it as well. And there might even be a third P, a little philanthropic there as well. But we've been trying to do that for 6 years now. But where we're being successful now working with Water Tectonics is actually a private. Under EPA, they have something called RCRA, Resource Recovery Act, where if you have a piece of property and you're generating some waste and you recover it there, then you get all kinds of benefits and grace to do that. So the federal level, they already have benefits to do that. And so I think private entities, if they start charging them more tipping fees to go to the landfills, they'll do it out of economic benefit. They'll start looking for ways to do it. So if you tell them, like they have in 5 states, you can't bring your organic waste to landfill anymore, they're gonna have to figure out a way to do it. And they might do it by, you can do it, but it's gonna cost you $800 a ton. But they're gonna find a lot of really good solutions for less than that. So some of it's gonna be carrot, some of it's gonna be stick. So you could do it from an economic perspective, saying, if you choose to do this, you're gonna pay the 800 and we'll figure it out for you, or you can go do it yourself. So I think with the group at McKenna, they're going to do it themselves, and nobody's really incenting them to do it. They're just going to do it because it's going to be good for them, but they're also going to save money hauling organic waste to the landfill, which they know is not the right thing to do. So I think a private person like them just to do it is fine. I think a municipality, you've got all these vendors that are getting paid to do the trucking and all that. It's going to take a while to get them into that business, so that it's not going to disrupt their business as well.
Yeah.
You know
I've
what I
got
mean?
an idea. I'll follow up with Stuart and Rebecca, but we're
Yeah,
out of time.
exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. No, I think Big Island's the way to start, but I'll follow up on that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks for the question. Thank you, James.
We're going to start, really pitching this to the counties, because you can imagine with landfills that are already at capacity, and this reduces volume by 90%, but unlike H-Power, it has all kinds of toxic, heavy metals in it, and you have to seal them up. And, this is healthy. You can put back on soil. You can use it as a soil amendment or for filtration, for odor and water filtration. So there are really just a lot of different uses, which are really exciting. And for this one, wastewater treatment plant, they make 90 trips to the landfill, and about $2,100, this system could pay for itself. The ROI would be, a couple of years. And so it really starts to save, especially if you have a lot of different inputs, like waste from wastewater treatment plant, but also all kinds of green waste, invasives. And so, farms could use this. And so a lot of different uses, which is, really exciting. But yeah, if you guys have more questions, feel free to reach out to us and we can set up some meetings with Jeff. You guys are all very well connected and doing, incredible research. So like we can stay in touch about this and set up some presentations. But it's super late where Jeff is. So I want to thank you again, Jeff, for taking the time and giving such a interesting presentation. And we're looking forward to continuing to find a home in Hawaii for you. And
Thank you.
thank all of you. I hope you have a great Earth Week. And thanks. I know all of you are doing good work, so we appreciate you joining us. And stay tuned next month. If you have any ideas for presentations, please let us know. Third Wednesday, 5:30. But we're also flexible when we do these. So if there are better times or days, let us know.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Everybody.
All right.
So,
Have a good one.
all guys, good night.